Hello and welcome to a more perfect podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be continuing my interview with former U.S. Border Patrol agent and U.S. Army Ranger Vincent Vargas. In this podcast, we talk about saving lives on the U.S. Mexico border, what it's like to be part of Border Patrol's Special Operations Unit, and much more. So, if you haven't already, check out part one. But even if you haven't, I guarantee you will enjoy this episode regardless. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So, we're going to talk about this, and then we're going to go into some current issues, and then I want to ask you, some broader questions, and then we're going to wrap things up a little bit. So in your book, I was flipping through it. I didn't actually get to this chapter, which is why I'm going to ask you about it now, because I thought it was really interesting. Um, just skimming it. Can you give a brief history of the Border Patrol? Because literally nobody knows how it came to be. Like how it developed over the years. I know it's over 100 years old.
Yeah,
I
no,
could
it's
I
it's a hundred
I could
oh
see you laughing because I'm asking you to spoil your book.
yeah. I was actually
Sorry.
no, you're good. I was actually looking for the book so I can use it real quick to help. But the portion of the history was written by another board agent who's very, very adamant about telling the history. And I thought, man, this is a great part. So I asked him to if he wouldn't mind.
Ah,
And so, not that I don't know the history. The history started back in the day when there was the Texas Rangers, and they started protecting the borders because the borders became a more
really?
solidified space. Yeah. And so
Okay,
and
interesting.
then you had, well, the Texas Rangers a big support of it, right? It was a big part of like how you protected your border. And then it kind of evolved into, you know, man, I can't remember the name of the individual, but it slowly turned into the Border Patrol just by way of noticing how important it was. There were surveyors that were going and trying to identify each area of the border and kind of
Sure.
marking where the border was. And so those surveyors were the ones who kind of first decided or agreed on the border with the counterpart of Mexico and just kind of working the border. And then it's kind of slowly evolved into like needing more people to kind of focus on that. And it was like
Okay,
it was men on horses, and they were just kind of keeping that regulated. And then there
that's
was a lot
cool.
you had the
Maybe like
alcohol.
protecting trade and whatnot.
Yeah, and you had the alcohol situation that was happening as well. And so there was illegal smuggling of alcohol, and it kind of grew from there. Yeah, the border patrol's been around for 100 years, and even slightly before that, like I said, the border was being protected, especially in Texas, by the Texas Rangers. But what people missed was that before 9/11, the border mission was slightly different, right? Because
How so?
9/11 is what created the Homeland Security kind of portion of it. You had
Mm.
immigration, but 9/11 is where everyone was like, hold up, we really need to start focusing on terrorism, potential terrorist threats.
Mm.
Now, the controversy behind that statement is the fact that those individuals weren't here illegally. They were here legally by way of visa, right? But that was
Never
become
knew that.
yeah. They weren't here illegally. They were here by way of a visa, and I think it was a certain kind of visa. I had a conversation with Sarah Evans on my podcast, and she talked about yes, but it was a visa that was given in kind of in a controversial disposition of it all. But either way, they weren't illegal immigrants, right? They were here by way of visa, right? So whatever that
Sure.
means, student visa and so on and so forth. But that's where the Homeland Security aspect became a thing. TSA, right? In our airports, kind of changed everything. And
Mm.
so now we not only focus on immigration policy,
Mm-hmm.
now we focus heavily on Homeland Security.
Hmm.
Now, like so it's like, yeah, you might come across illegally. It wasn't the biggest like of disruption to America, but now who's coming through our borders? And what's
Hmm.
that look like? And are these individuals here just by way of trying to get a job, or are they have nefarious intentions? Are they here to get a stronghold of America and eventually, do something internally to destroy
Sure.
this man. And so that's where things really pivoted. But before then, people didn't even think about the Border Patrol. But the Border Patrol has been involved in many different aspects of helping with Homeland Security. Before that, helping with the FBI, helping with just many different things. That chapter is really cool. I like to read it. That's created by a gentleman who has many different versions of the history of the Border Patrol, going back from the beginning all the way till now. So I'll
Yeah.
send you
Let me.
so people can find that.
Well, I actually have the book right here. Hold on.
I have a copy right here. Let me grab it. Copy of my own book. Here.
Exactly. No shame.
Ah, let's see. There's so many. That one. There we go.
No,
Yeah, he
I'm
has,
sorry. I didn't mean to put you on a spot like this. It's
no,
just
it
it's just
says,
I was curious.
so in the 1920s, that's what it says. They call it patrol inspectors. That's what it was.
Ah,
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. There's things in here like when the creation of Bortac. Do you remember back in the day, the big thing that was in the news was Elian Gonzalez, the kid that came from Cuba back in the day? You might be too young for that, but when I back in the day, the the
I'm
this
23.
yeah, there you
So,
go. So there was an incident that happened that
and
was
that's
national.
also my audience, right?
Yeah,
I'm getting this message out to them.
yeah.
So
So there was Elian Gonzalez in 2000s. Yeah, this it was a Cuban kid that was on a boat that eventually they came across, and eventually some board hackers. This is where they made national news. Went in and secured the kid, and went into this big old legal thing. And there was pictures. It was one of the first
what?
times we see Bortac publicly going into a house and trying to secure these illegal migrants who came across. And it was very well documented, but there's so much history that it's actually what I'm trying to do for the Border Patrol is to create more docu-series to tell these stories so we don't lose the history of the Border
Mm,
Patrol from the beginning of it till now. And
what a
that's what
mission.
it yeah, it's an important one to not because for some reason the Border Patrol didn't didn't do I wouldn't say do a great job documenting. They have the documents. We have a Border Patrol museum in El Paso, but the world or the public persona of it, we don't see videos of it. We need more.
Yeah.
We need more videos. We need people to be able to see that and understand it.
Yeah. People think about, FBI is portrayed in the movies, DEA is portrayed in Breaking Bad, but
Yeah.
I realized I've never seen a Border Patrol movie. I mean, I've never seen a Border Patrol movie. I saw Sicario. Um,
So there's not
that's
we're
the
so we're
closest I'm gonna get.
yeah, I would say there's not any that the career field is super proud of because, I think there's room for one here soon. It's something that I've been working on myself is trying to get, a Border Patrol film out.
Hey, if anybody's gonna write it and direct it, I'm probably looking at them, and you're gonna do a damn good job, sir. Oh man. Well, I hope to see it. If it comes to fruition. Um, so that'd be pretty cool. Um, okay, so I don't even know. I don't even know where that started. Oh yeah, the history. Um, so okay, okay. So now I want to go to now that we've semi covered the past. I want to go into the present, and I want to ask you like like a flurry of things that I've heard about Border Patrol, situations on the border, etc.
Yeah.
So just to start off, what do you do when you encounter a cartel tunnel when they're tunneling from the Mexican side of the border to the U.S. side of the border?
Yeah, I mean, I personally never have, but they just found one right in El Paso.
That's
I'd
that's what I
imagine,
saw. Yeah.
I mean, probably the proper thing to do is they report it to their higher ups, and that at that point, that's kind of a a national news kind of situation because it's hard to kind of determine where tunnels are. We don't have all of our technology doesn't do it really well, and
Hmm.
so when an agent finds that, that's a big deal because that's who knows how many millions of either contraband or personnel were transported through that tunnel.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those ones that we have to get a lot of attention towards. We have to get everyone in there and start investigating it, seeing what information you could find from that tunnel, and make further reports and hopefully identify which organization created it, and trying to hopefully dismantle that situation, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
those are fascinating, man. When you find those, it's fascinating to see the construction that they had, right? They had very good construction. They had stability in it. They had a system in there for to make sure that you can breathe, right? They had everything you could ever think of in there, and it had
It's
a good enough size.
crazy.
Yeah, so it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
I've never been fortunate enough to witness one. I'm very excited to hopefully go down there and see this one. But yeah, that's a special occasion when you're able to find one.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was talking to Chris Clem, and we were talking about drones being sent over the border to smuggle drugs or other such things, like maybe just to scout for agents. Did you ever encounter any of those? I mean, I know you're a former border patrol agent, but was it that bad back then,
It
or?
wasn't even a thing back then. Back then
Oh
they used to have
yeah.
called I think it's called lights or something. It was just like kind of like little flying kites that they would drop a lot of marijuana off like that. They'd kind of
What?
think it's called an ultralight. Yeah, they'd fly it. They pretty much fly it, come around, drop it, and fly right back. And that's how they used to do a lot of like the very odd way of transporting dope, right?
That's
But
so weird. That is
yeah,
so weird.
yeah.
Okay.
But now, just by way of me being on the border all the time and filming, yeah, you see the drones. They use them for many different ways. Just same way that people use them in Ukraine, you're starting to see them use them
Oh
here.
yeah.
So there's a potential. That's probably one of our bigger threats that we need to pay attention to as Americans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I sometimes I wonder, if like the cartels, they hate, law enforcement. Obviously they're criminals, and they're running a business, and if you get in the way of their business, they're going to, not take kindly to that. Um why aren't we like, and I'm assuming, like, is it just hard to differentiate between a bad actor and a good actor, or when beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's a bad actor, um are you going in with lethal force, or are you going in always with less than lethal force and escalate?
Give me an example of what we're talking about.
So okay, so you see a SUV with like three people with long guns at night,
In
you know,
America,
no, like running across the border, in one of these paths, right? How do you approach that? Like, how are you confronting that threat? Because these are obviously people with bad intentions. I mean, nobody that well armed is gonna be carrying something good,
and
right?
so you're
How
saying
would
coming
you how would
to
you
America.
oops yeah, crossing the border from Mexico into America? How would you confront that threat?
Well, we have uh, the military has rules of engagement. The Border Patrol has a use of force continuum.
Okay.
In the event of those individuals who, if you identify that they have long arms and they're coming across the border, then at that point you would escalate your threat levels to a point where if they point them at you at any point, then you would be, if your life is in danger, you're allowed to subdue that threat. It's a
Mm.
very complicated situation because we are law enforcement officers, not military. In the military, if the ROE at the time, say in the cities,
ROE.
rules of engagement, excuse me,
Okay.
the rules of engagement is different in combat. You're allowed to engage on a very different level. But in America, as a law enforcement officer, you have to have fear of, and they have to have the capability of taking your life, right? For
Yeah.
you to engage and attempt to take theirs in the state of protecting your own life, right? Or others. And
Mm.
so if you did witness that, then you'd have to make a determination whether it was a life-threatening situation for you to engage or not. Um,
Hmm.
to be honest, there is not a lot of moments in the border where constitutes lethal force.
Sure.
And the reason is that the cartel and drug smuggling organizations and human smuggling organizations, they have a system that works for them. They're making their money. And if at any point they elevate the threat levels on our side, we will just bring more law enforcement officers to shut down the border even more. And if we do that, it would ruin their abilities to be successful.
That would make sense.
So I wouldn't say it's a public partnership by any means, but it's kind of this unspoken reality that they're getting enough across that they're happy, and we're stopping enough that we're happy. And there's a weird balance to that that
That is
is
strange.
that is an unspoken just reality. Like, oh crap, you know, if there's been moments where back in the day there was a couple of agents who were killed, um, and we escalated our security and it caused a lot of issues for them. And usually you'll see a cartel kind of give an apology statement, or they'll do things like, hey, these are the guys, we caught them, and they give them back to us, or they kill them themselves. And that's almost like a sign of like, hey, that wasn't us. We had no intentions of hurting anyone in America. We were
Wow.
just, yeah. And so that is a
Wow.
very common practice for the cartel. That just recently, I think it was about a year and a half ago, 2 years, there was some individuals that came from America into Mexico. What was said in the investigation that they were there for medical kind of services, doing some plastic surgery. But in the event of them driving across, they were caught in a crossfire and they were killed. I think one of them survived. But when the investigation started happening, right, you're saying American citizens are now killed. That's a big issue for us. We don't like that. And within days, the cartel dumped 6 men onto the floor with a sign saying these are the men responsible for that, and they're now dead, right? They were either
Huh.
dead or I'm not sure, but that's their way of kind of
Well,
regulating this kind of weird system that we have going on.
so okay. That's
Yeah, it's a strange reality, is that there is
things get
balance,
strange on the border, it sounds like.
right? There's a
Very
there's a weird
strange.
balance there,
Yeah.
just like in a prison system. There's only one corrections officer and there's 40 of them. They're not going to start the issues, right? They get their 3 hot meals, they get their comfortable. Same on the border. There's a weird balance there. This is not like an agreed shaken hand terms type of thing. This is just the reality that they get enough cross, we stop enough, both sides are happy. If some balance gets disrupted in that, I think that's when you'll see some kind of change. But for the most part, we're doing all our best to catch it all. We're doing our best to catch it all. We're obviously not, right? But they also don't want us to enforce more laws because it slows down their traffic. And so there's very little conflict on the borders currently at this time.
Sure. Sure. Um and so but on this topic of confrontation, there was this famous scandal a few years ago with these with the horse whipping thing. You remember that, how it was this photo and it looked like the guy on the horse patrol was whipping this Haitian, or I don't know if he was Haitian, um, but some immigrant, and it looked like something that it was not. Joe Biden came out, blatantly lied about it. Not to get too political about it, but it was a crap show. Um, my question to you is this: in confrontation, do law enforcement officers ever on the border, are they ever in the back of their minds kind of like, does it does it intimidate them to the point of affecting their jobs, that they could face media blowback and they could be on the cover of the Times. Does the threat of media retaliation affect the way Border Patrol agents operate?
It's a great question, and I mean, I imagine yes, right? From what
Okay,
happened, I don't know, but I haven't talked to anyone saying, but I guarantee that is a big hindrance to their way of practice,
sure.
because what happened to Del Rio. It was proven that there was just a horse patrol member using the reins to
Yeah.
control the horse, which the picture depicted, but for some reason taken out of context and turned into a big dramatic thing. Yeah, I would imagine there's agents that are scared to do their job because of what the public persona is and what the media might portray. Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason why I wrote the book, to hopefully clarify a lot of what the Border Patrol career field is, to
Sure.
hopefully kind
Sure.
of humanize the badge in a ways that people can stop looking at them like they're these monsters.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I was just wondering about that because I hear a lot about that in you know the regular law enforcement side of things. Police cop on the block, so to speak. Um, and okay, so one more question about the present, maybe two. Um, so there's a group you mentioned it earlier, Tren de Aragua. They're a very violent group. They're in the media a lot recently. There's obviously other groups. Um, so what are they exactly? I mean, are they a cartel, or are they? I believe they're from Venezuela. They're a former prison gang from Venezuela.
Yeah.
And like what kinds of things are they capable of? How widespread are they? Um, did you encounter any of them back in the day? Like fill me
Yeah,
in
no.
on them.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot about them now because I'm interviewing a lot of people who have become experts on them. They're
Oh
very,
yeah,
yeah, they're a fairly new organization. I guess we can deem them as what they call them, domestic terrorists in a way,
sure.
because of terrorizing some of these cities. They are an organized crime organization, some kind of transnational organization. You know, they're spread across the nation already. There's supposedly over 600 documented TDA members across the nation. I think there's probably double that. And almost every major big city, you're hearing about it. In just San Antonio alone, I believe there was 8 homicides that are contributed to, or that are identified as from them and their little organization in San Antonio. I'm
Holy
talking
hell.
We've heard it here in Dallas. I have friends that are in Minnesota, in Ohio, and so one of the surprising elements that one of my FBI buddies that I can connect you with for an interview if you're interested.
I would
Uh,
love to.
yeah, he said that it is the fastest moving organized crime element that he has ever seen, and his fears are like how fast they've been able to infiltrate into America, into these major cities, and already kind of create these organized crime situations. He's
Interesting.
terrified by it, and his one of his biggest investigations was on MS-13, and he goes, they're similar to MS-13, but they're growing faster. And I'm not sure how and why this happened, but they've been able to create, organized crime in some of the major cities, New York as well, and they've also been able to get away with a lot because of the some of these sanctuary cities are not, implementing, the DA's not prosecuting, essentially, like in New York and whatnot.
Yeah, that's
So it's a
that's
really
scary.
interesting thing, and it's something that I think everyone should pay attention to. This isn't this isn't one of those things where everybody from Venezuela's danger, but
Yeah,
those,
yeah. I think people have got to realize that when you're calling out these threats, they aren't meant to be a face for anti-immigrant propaganda.
right,
You are calling out a threat. You are not calling out a class of people.
right. Now,
Um,
these guys have been proven to be very violent against law enforcement, and they believe there is ties
Can
to
you
the
give me
United.
any specifics, like things that these people have done?
So they just against law enforcement. They're willing to attack law enforcement is what most people are talking about. How they just so against the law enforcement that that is their focus is hurting law enforcement officers, like in New York, it was proven there. But they're already extorting, owners of apartment buildings. They're extorting people in New York. They're proven to already have sex trade happening. They're using women.
Jesus.
Yeah, and so this is the continued thing, human trafficking, sex trafficking. They're already involved in it because of the border kind of influx. And so they're doing all the things that you can think of in such a small group in such a short period of time, and they're being very successful at it.
That's grimly interesting.
Yeah.
That is grim. Um, but this is a new organization. You didn't encounter them back in your time on active patrol.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, that's crazy. What were the operations that you did? Like if you had to name one big operation that you were involved in as a member of the Border Patrol Special Forces, what would it be exactly?
Probably the most publicized one that I was on was the Escape from Dannemora, the TV show that was recreation of the two escaped convicts out of New York, a prison in New York.
Tell me
Um,
about that.
it was two escaped prisoners, Matt and Sweats, who were in for murder.
Hmm.
They convinced a female corrections officer to let them help them escape. They
Mm-hmm.
escaped in New York. They were in, northern New York area, and they went into the forest there, and they tried to make way to either the northern border or Mexico. We heard potentially the Mexico, so that's when they activated our team. We got
Mm-hmm.
out there, and in the 7 days of searching, we got very close to finding, remnants of their locations. But by that seventh day, I flew home early because I had a
Mm-hmm.
daughter's birthday. It was, and that next day, my team was able to apprehend one of them by 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 force, and they had to shoot and kill one of the individuals, and then a local law
Wow.
enforcement officer was able to apprehend the other. And so, that was national news. My team was involved in that. Um, and outside of that, a lot of our missions were to dismantle and disrupt cartel organizations along the southwest border.
Hmm. So did that mean splitting them up, like turning them against themselves, or
No, it
like
means it means more of
taking out the kingpins, maybe?
yeah, collecting enough intel to destroy their transport of drugs and
Mm.
start getting the DA to prosecute these individuals so you can get them off the street.
Okay.
You slowly dismantle them by getting them into prison, right? Having good cases and strong cases against them.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Um. Hmm. So another narrative that people have. So and I'm just I'm so we have the new administration coming in less than a week, right? And we've kind of like all those narratives 8 years ago are starting to you know the gears are starting to crank up again. The machine is starting to spin. Um so there's been talk of border patrol agents separating and tearing apart families at the border. What's the reality of this versus the media narrative?
Give me the question.
Um, so there's been a lot of rhetoric about border patrol agents, like cruelly, ripping apart families at the border, separating families at the border. Um, what's the actual reality of this versus the narrative?
So the when you apprehend someone and they have a
Yeah.
family, you as
Yeah.
an agent have to identify if it's actually their family or a smuggling case. And the way you
Okay.
do is you have to separate them for questioning. You have to
Okay.
separate mom to kids, the adult, the adult male. And once you have a further investigation, you determine that they are family. Well, then you put that family together and you work on getting them either deported, or if they're seeking asylum, then they stay together. If at some point you determine that that is not their family, well, then now they go into our custody and we follow whatever policy that is in place at this time for trying to repatriate that child into their country of origin and connecting them back with their parent or a family member. Or they go into our system, which is an orphanage essentially system where we put
Mm.
them into our own care until we can identify some kind of parental uh, I guess a parent that is connected to them by blood or by family. Very
Mm.
complicated situation. Back
Okay.
when the Trump administration was originally doing it, it was a way of also deterrence, but it is a way of determining whether this is a human smuggling case or not.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and so the truth of the matter is, you do everything you can to not split the families. But if there's a contradiction in the story, well, then, and they identify that it's a human smuggling case, well, then at that point, we take control of them. And what is put into place right now is
Okay.
whatever the executive branch has.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Um, and so now I want to ask you some questions, some broader questions. So in all your tours of duty, in all your tours of duty overseas, and your patrols on the border, what gave you the courage to keep going?
Uh, I believe in serving people, serving a community, serving the
Yeah.
country. So I believe in this nation. I believe that there takes people like me and many others out there to continue to uphold, what we believe in.
Sure.
And so I'm just driven by service. And I was always willing to risk my life for something that as big as that. And so that's just why I continue to serve in the capacity that I do now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And you were obviously you were a big part of border patrol. You were the elite. Um, what makes like w- these are kind of like broad questions, right?
Okay.
But if there's anyone to ask, it's got to be you. Um, what do you think constitutes somebody who's got the fortitude to be a leader, like, and how can we as ordinary citizens exhibit that kind of leadership in our own lives?
That's tough.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Uh,
uh, you know,
the questions got kind of personal. I was just
okay.
I was just wondering your take on this.
Look, I think everyone starts to kind of figure out who they are, and
Okay.
when I was a 18-year-old kid, I never thought I would do this. When I was
Sure.
23 as a teenager, I never thought I'd lead to this, and now as a portrait, I never thought I'd lead to what I'm doing now. I just kind of I have my morals, my values, and kind of like my personal beliefs and I believe in God, family, and country, and that's me. And so since I
Yeah.
believe in God, family, and country, I try and follow those to as much as I can. And I think as long as I stay on board with that idea, I will be internally proud of myself, but also happy. And I think everyone has to find what drives them, their why. And for me,
Mm.
I would die for serving a greater purpose and be proud of that. And I can die a happy man by knowing
Mm.
that my life was not wasted doing anything else other than serving a greater purpose. And so that's what drives me. And I found that while serving in the military. I didn't think that
Mm.
as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid. I just wanted another paycheck to help with my daughter. But as I served this country and I watched a bunch of great men serve this country and, losing a few of those great men,
Mm.
it inspired me to continue to serve in a greater capacity. And currently I serve in a different capacity by focusing on men's wellness. And because this same exact question is, I'm trying to find people, help men find the answer to that. What is their why? And how to attack that why with meaning and purpose.
How do you do that? I see, my friends are around me, like we're all struggling with purpose nowadays. We're all falling into this kind of like despair, this depression, these mental health issues especially, and it's rampant. Like I don't know a person. Like I'm 23. I don't know anybody who's not on some kind of medication or has some kind of mental health, crisis in their lives. Literally, I do not know a single person.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting. I
you
know.
know,
I host a
finding your why. That's a very significant thing.
I run a men's group. That's one of the companies that I manage, and we have a lot of men figuring that out. And kind of the process we use,
What is it? What
yeah,
is this men's group called?
it's called Light the Fuse.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal of it is that, I think we need to do deeper dives into our souls, we deeper dives
Mm.
into ourselves and really identify what the purpose is. Well, how do you do that? Well, you do more, right?
Hmm.
If you're if you believe in anything, I think serving others helps you find your purpose. Serving others,
Hmm.
helping others in service. And so whether that be donating time to feed the homeless, whether that be volunteering your time to help, at the veterans affair, when you're serving others, I think you really start to see what makes you tick and what area of that helps. And when you serve others, it immediately gives you purpose. And what we do in our group is we ask each one of these men to create 5 goals. 4 of them are absolutely attainable. They could be easy goals. Run a half marathon, write a book. And I say easy, like these are just things that just actions create, the outcome. It could be something losing 40 pounds. And then that one fifth goal is something extremely challenging. Like all things have to align and be like landing a job that pays 200,000 a year. Okay, cool. Well, how do we lead up to that? Well, then you just start
Hmm.
giving direction, right? These 5 goals are what you're focusing on. Well, let's start going direction. So how do you write a book? Easy, one chapter at a time. Sounds good. Let's start getting an outline of what that chapter looks like and start doing one at a time. And every time we meet, we're kind of pushing them further down that path of their 5 goals. By the end of the year, if they've accomplished even 4 of these goals, they're a better man than they were last year.
Hmm.
Inside of that, we teach tools. When someone stresses out, when someone's going through some kind of stressful or ordeal, you have to have tools to mitigate that, whether that be fitness, music, breathing, meditation. I don't care what it is, but there's many of tools out there that we can all use. You have to be an expert at your own tools and knowing when to use those, when to implement tools to mitigate stressors. So we teach guys breathing, we teach guys fitness. We do all the things you need to give them tools so they have in their back pocket. Okay, that will
Interesting.
mitigate a lot of issues. And when you do that, trust me, you start finding more answers. And then we challenge people to read books out there that are interesting, find different lifestyles. We push. Man, I probably read something around 20, 30 books a year, and that's because I'm interested in learning more about other things in life. I currently am a counselor for substance abuse on the part-time side. So I host men's group in substance abuse as well and mental health. And it's because I've gone through a big path in finding my way. I've gone to school now and to learn more about this because the subject fascinates me. It fascinates me that young men at 23 can't figure out what their passion is. And I would tell them, like, go do more. Go do more. Go sign up for to be a cop. If you don't want to, go try it. Go through the academy, test it. If you don't like it, walk away. If you go try and go in the military, do a reserve thing capacity. Give 3 years of your life to that. Learn more about yourself. But you're never going to figure out what your purpose is by sitting in a room, going through YouTube, TikTok, or anything else. You have to physically put yourself through adversity for you to
Hmm.
actually change. Reading a book currently right now by a former Ranger and a former Special Forces, and they say perseverance changes a person. So put yourself through
Hmm.
hard challenges, change your character. And when you change your character, you'll learn a lot about yourself and you'll start being more proud. As another
Hmm.
gentleman whose name is Matt Larson, is accomplish things. That is huge for you to accomplish things. You'll find self gratitude, self happiness in accomplishment, but also then savor the moment. Learn how to enjoy that moment and actually celebrate that win, right? Because we don't do that enough. I graduated from college. I'm like, when's
Yeah.
the next one? I,
Yeah.
I accomplish this goal. I go, when's the next one? So accomplish goals, but also know how to savor that joy, savor that happiness, you know,
Interesting.
and learn how to be loved and love yourself. You know what I'm saying? That's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. We don't love ourselves enough. We put too
Yeah.
much pressure on ourselves. We're mad at ourselves, our insecurities, our egos. They get a lot of us, and so it's I think people believe mental health is that there's a destination, right? Like, oh, I just went through this breathing exercise and I feel great. Well, it doesn't stop there because life doesn't stop. The goal
No.
is it's not a destination. It's a continual process of doing work,
Yeah.
continually growing, continually evolving, continuing finding answers. Life changes and so will we. And so there's no point in your life that you're allowed to be stagnant. You have to keep moving and it has to be in a forward direction. I call it the uphill hustle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that is something that people needed to hear about. Um, I, some days it's hard to even get out of bed. For a lot of for a lot of people I know, it's like these things are easy to say, but it's hard to, as you said, to light the fuse.
Yeah.
Um, these things are great, but how do I take the first step? How do I take the first step to my like? It sounds crazy. It might sound crazy from the outside, but sometimes it's hard to get to step out to the refrigerator. Um,
Yeah.
it's
So
it's
I would
gotten
say
that bad.
this for anyone listening, the first step is create a plan, right? So for the first step for anyone, put a to-do list, mean create a routine.
Sure.
So first things first, if you create a routine, you've written down a plan, you've put it into your head and saying, I'm going to do this. Now there's multiple psychological aspects that are happening at this moment. Here's my plan. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's the routine. You're telling yourself you're going to do it. Wake up and do it. And then do it
Mm.
again and do it again and do it again. And that will build to a next routine where what's the next to do? I have a list of things I want to accomplish and I'm getting them done daily. And I think everyone should kind of be on that routine and give yourself grace. There's going to be a day you're like, I don't feel like it. It's okay. But get back on that list the next day.
Interesting. That's great advice. That's great advice. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Um, any other stuff you want to say? It can be about the border patrol. It can be about mental health. Any closing message you'd like to give to the audience?
No, man, I'm available to everyone. And so if you have questions about the border, hit me up on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to communicate with me. If you have questions about mental health, reach out to me. If you have questions about sobriety, reach out to me. I will answer
Okay.
every message that comes through. That's what I do. Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
I'd love to collaborate on a post with you on Instagram to get our things linked together so I can tell everybody that I know about it.
and
Okay.
if you want tomorrow night, you can join our call. I have a special guest. We have calls every Tuesday night for the men's group. You're more than welcome to join it for free. Just come on and just kind of observe it and check it out.
Sure.
And so,
Absolutely.
so you can see it. And like I said, I'm available to everybody. My life has been very, very complex. I've done a lot of things. I've accomplished a lot. And, I
I
use
could
this,
see that. Yeah. Yeah.
like I said, God, family, and country. That's just, my world that's my path. And so
Absolutely, sir.
if I can help you guys, you got it. Just hit me up.
Alrighty. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really really enjoyed our conversation.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Yeah.
Later.
All right. Yeah. See ya. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of A More Perfect Podcast. Vincent Vargas was truly a pleasure to have on the show. From his experience as a U.S. Army Ranger to a member of the Border Patrol Special Forces to his philanthropic efforts for men's mental health, I had a lot to learn from Vincent Vargas, and hopefully you did too. So if you enjoyed this episode, then if you're listening via audio, please subscribe to the YouTube channel by searching up A More Perfect Podcast hosted by Dylan on YouTube, or giving it a 5-star review also helps if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you for listening. Please tell all your friends and family about this podcast. It really helps it grow. And as always, have a more perfect day.